Well, good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started for the evening. Thank you all so much for being a part of the Student Ministry Development e-course. This e-course is a 4-week course where we will walk through specific titles or topics that affect our areas of ministry. For most of us, it's considered our areas of ministry and for our business. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mute everyone for the sake of the recording. I'm going to start the recording now. I'm going to mute everyone for the sake of the recording. So as we share the recording, everyone that hears it can hear everything that I'm saying. It may offer you if you're doing it on your phone, you should see a button that says raise hand if you have a question, or you can just wave at me to let me know if you have a question, or you can chat with me to let me know if you have a question, and then I'll unmute you. And when I want to know if you have any questions, during our question and answer period, I will unmute everyone. So everyone is now muted. And if you have something to say, you can actually unmute yourself. So if you have something to say, you can unmute yourself. If you have a question or a concern, you can unmute yourself. I'm going to go ahead and get started with prayer. Father, in Christ Jesus' name, we thank you for this time together. We ask that you allow this time to be fruitful. We thank you, God, that it will add value to our lives, our ministries, our organizations, and the areas that you have chosen us to lead. We give you praise, honor, and glory for all of your many blessings, for watching over us and keeping us. And we ask, God, that you just honor this sacrifice of time and commitment to grow, God, to be everything that you have called and created us to be. So we thank you for it. We give you praise and glory in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Tonight's class is called Leveraging Resources. Now, this is an area that I'm very passionate about. And there are 2 parts that we'll talk about tonight. Before we get into tonight's class, I'm going to do a little recap about last week's class. So last week, we talked about developing a dream team, understanding that you have to have a team in order for the dream to come to pass. And that dream is the vision, it's the cause, it's the reason why you've come together, it's the reason why you're working in an organization, it's the reason why you're serving at a local church, it's the reason for. So that's what the dream is. We also learned last week that the team doesn't belong to you, the team belongs to the dream. So you have to make sure you're developing a team that will be reflective, or that will be a team that will commit to the dream. The team can't just commit to you as an individual. The team has to commit to the dream. So we learned 3 things that we need to develop a dream team. The first thing that we need to do is we need to understand the vision. We have to understand the cause. If you don't understand the cause, you won't develop the right team for the cause. So you have to understand the vision. The second thing, and in understanding the vision, you have to know who you want on your team, and you have to know who you don't want on your team. So once you understand the vision, once you understand what it is that's required of you, or the task at hand, you have to know who you want on your team and who you don't want on your team. And the kind of people that you don't want on your team is you don't want the blamers. You don't want that blaming person that's going to blame something on everybody else. You don't want that person who has an old school mentality, who's not going to really think forward. They're always thinking behind. And then you don't want that person that can do everything and won't allow other people's gifts to be used. And then you have to know who you don't want on your team. And that person, you have to know who you don't want, and that's the blamer, that's the person who has the old school mentality, and then that's the person who wants to do everything and never allow other people's gifts to be used. And then you have to know who you want, and the people that you want have to be mission-minded, teachable, and flexible. So you have to understand the vision, you have to know who you want on your team, and then you have to know who you don't want on your team. And I believe that those are 3 things that you have to use, and you have to have, and you have to develop and figure out how it works within the context of whatever organization you're working with or serving with. You have to figure out how those 3 things work in that organization for you to be successful at developing your dream team. So that was just a little recap. If anybody has any questions from last week, please make sure you let me know. You can shoot questions to me through email. You can text me. I put my cell phone information inside of the email that I sent out. So make sure you communicate with me and let me know if you have any questions, if there was any area where I was unclear, any area that you feel like you need me to dig in a little bit. I know that we only have a little bit of time. So I'm sorry, my phone keeps ringing, and my phone is an Apple phone, and it's connected to my iPad, my phone, and my computer. So it just like interrupts everything. So I hope I was able to stop it. I think I did. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Okay. So we have to make sure that we're developing our dream team the way that it needs to be developed. But again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, just shoot me an email, give me a call, and we will go from there. All right. So now we're going to transition into our conversation for tonight. Our conversation for tonight is leveraging resources. Tonight's conversation is leveraging resources, leveraging the resources that we have. One of the things that I want to start with, this is going to be a two-part conversation. One part will be about you, the leader or the person that's needing to leverage their resources. And I want you to understand, the most important resource that you have to work with. And then the other part is going to be more practical on how you actually leverage those resources, how we have to understand what leveraging is, and then we have to understand what resources is, and then we'll blend those two words together to figure out how we leverage our resources to see our areas that we give leadership over, to see them grow. And we know we always need resources. And typically, if you're dealing with a nonprofit organization, a church, there is always a shortage of one or the other. So tonight, hopefully the information that I'm able to give will help you in discovering or discerning how to work the resources that you have, to figure out the resources that you don't have, to figure out what it is that you need, and how to be successful in your area. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about is when we talk about businesses, or we talk about organizations, or we talk about ministries, because that's the most of my experience has been in ministry, which is a business, which is an organization. But when we talk about businesses or organizations, people typically will look at three resources that you need. They look at three resources that you need, or two resources that you need. The two resources that they'll say that you need are money, and they'll say that you need the resource of time. People will always say that you need the resource of money, and they'll always say that you need the resource of time. But I would like to propose an additional resource that we all need, and that we all need to pay attention to, and that we all need to manage. And I think if we can manage this third resource, because sometimes you can't always figure out what to do with your time, or how much you can't structure how much time you have. Because if you're working in an organization and they say we need something by tomorrow, that's the only time that you have. You can't do anything about that time. And sometimes if there's no money available, you can't really do much about the resource. You can't do much about the money. So the third resource that I would like to propose that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to, that third resource, is the resource of your energy. The resource of your energy. We have to pay attention to the resource of our energy. And you may say, well, Cherie, how is energy my resource? Energy is a resource because it deals with us. We have to understand who we are. When we're leading in organizations, we have to understand how we work best. And if we don't understand how we work best, you will never be able to deal with time, and you will never be able to deal with money if you don't understand how you work best. So I want to encourage you to not just stop at thinking, oh, I need a bunch of time and I need a bunch of money. Because again, if you work in a nonprofit organization, you work in a church, you work for somebody else's company where you are not the CEO, time and money may not be things that you can control. They may not give you enough time. And more times than not, they won't give you enough money. They may not give you enough time, and they won't give you enough money. But your energy is something that you can control. Your energy is something that you can control. We say, Cherie, how do I control my energy? When you think about your organization or your ministry, it runs off of your creative energy. Whatever you give leadership to, it's running off of your creative energy. Now, you may be given directives, you may be told some things to do, but it's your creative energy that runs your area. It's your creative energy. And if you use all of your creative energy in areas that are not important, you won't get that creative energy back. So I want to encourage you, make sure you guard your energy. I'm going to give you 3 ways to guard your energy, and then we're going to dive right into identifying the resources that we need for ministry and how we leverage those. Have a couple of ideas on how you can leverage them, and hopefully it'll add value to your ministry and your life. But I'm going to give you 3 ways that you can manage or you can guard your energy. Your energy is important. You only get your energy. I can't use your energy to work my area of ministry. I can only use my creative energy. So the first thing that I have to do in order to manage my energy is I have to stop managing time and manage my energy. So the first thing you have to do is stop managing time, but manage your energy. What does that mean, Cherie? So you have a calendar, right? You have a calendar of events. And on your calendar, you have on every Tuesday, you have a staff meeting. And then every Wednesday, you have a midweek service. And every Thursday, you have a team meeting. And on Fridays, it's a youth or a children's event. So you have all of these things on your calendar, and we're tempted to just manage those things. But we're not looking at our calendar, and we're not telling our energy where to go. So for me, let's say, for instance, on Tuesdays at most organizations that I've worked at, Tuesdays was our meeting day. So with Tuesday being a meeting day, in those meetings, we would do administrative things. It would be church-wide meeting day. Administrative things, we would do some creative things, but those creative things would be church-wide. So it wasn't just specific to my area of ministry. So I would do administrative. I would go from one meeting that was administrative. Then I would go to another meeting that was creative. Then I would go to another meeting that was more spiritual. So after those 3 meetings, what I realized is that I was empty. I had no more creative energy. I had nothing else to give. But I had this idea, well, if it's Tuesdays and it's a meeting day, I'm going to put all my meetings on Tuesdays. So I would schedule meetings with my volunteers on Tuesdays. I would schedule meeting with teachers on Tuesdays. And I realized that because I was thinking I was doing good with my calendar. I was making Tuesday my meeting day. And when you have a lot to do, it's easy to try to put everything on one day because you're thinking I'm being more effective. But I didn't pay attention. I didn't manage my energy. So I didn't pay attention to, after having a spiritual meeting, after having a creative meeting, and after having an administrative meeting that were outside of my area of ministry, I was exhausted. So by the time my volunteers got to me at 5:30, 6 o'clock for a team meeting, a creative meeting about lessons and things like that, I had nothing to give. All of my energy was gone. And they were frustrated with me because they came in like, yes, let's do it. And I was like, so what y'all think? But I had to realize I had to stop managing my time, quit looking at it as a calendar, and then manage my energy. So now I don't add Tuesdays as a meeting day to do anything other than the things that I'm supposed to do that are my job requirements. So I know every Tuesday at my job that I currently have at Change Church, I know every Tuesday we have a staff huddle. Every Tuesday we have a staff meeting. Then we do worship planning for the week. Then we do creative planning. When I'm done with those 4 things, I have nothing else to give. Done, finito, finish. So now when I need to have creative planning sessions about my area of ministry with my team, I put that on a day that I'm not using a lot of energy. So I may put that on a Thursday. I may put that on a Saturday because I know I have the energy to do exactly what I need. Stop managing your time, but manage your energy. Pay attention to the tasks that leave you depleted. Pay attention to the tasks that leave you depleted. So for me, there are many tasks that deplete me. Scheduling depletes me. So on a day that I do scheduling, I don't do anything else. I schedule scheduling on a day that I don't do anything else. Because for me, scheduling includes figuring out who can serve when for an entire month, uploading lessons in the system, making sure everybody knows what they have, everything is printed, things like that. So once I do that, I realize that's a task that depletes all of my energy. So I make sure I don't schedule creative things on the same day that I'm doing tasks that deplete my energy. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm going to unmute you all. For everybody, does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Good deal. So make sure you schedule tasks. Think about the tasks that deplete your energy, and then think about the tasks that give you energy. Now, there are tasks that give me energy. And on those tasks that give me energy, I can do a lot of other things on that day. So actually, one-on-ones with team members gives me energy. So I can add that to a day that I know I need energy. So if I'm doing If I'm doing scheduling, which it depletes my energy, I would schedule a one-on-one with somebody before that to give myself the energy I need to do the things that I know deplete my energy. So stop managing your time, manage your energy. The second thing is schedule for a balanced energy disbursement. Okay, so you have to be intentional about scheduling a balanced energy disbursement. What does that mean? Know what drains you and know where to put it. So make sure when you calendar plan for the week, for the month, and you have all these tasks to do and you have all these things to do, make sure you schedule those things to where it doesn't deplete you, especially if you have other things to do. So if you're a wife or you're a husband or you're a daughter or who has to give input in the family and they depend on you for certain things, make sure you schedule things so that it's not going to hurt you, but it's going to help you. So make sure you look at your entire schedule. Take Mondays. If Monday's your day off, or if it's a day where you pull things together, or whatever your Sabbath is, make sure you take a moment, 30 minutes to an hour, and look at what my next week is going to look like. Make sure so for me, if my pastor calls an audible, and he has the right to do that, if my pastor calls an audible and he says, hey, I need to meet with you guys tomorrow and do X, Y, and Z. If I look at my calendar and I say, well, I have this plan and that plan, I'm going to start moving stuff around. I'm going to start making some calls and letting people know, my apologies, but I'm going to need to reschedule our time. I'm going to need to reschedule something because I have to make sure that I balance out my schedule. I need to make sure that it's balanced. Everything on my schedule is balanced. And then the third thing that you have to do when you are guarding or protecting your energy is when you start to problem solve the problem, not the symptoms. Problem solve the problem, not the symptoms. So you may be saying, Cherie, what does that mean? When you spend your energy identifying the root of a problem, then you can create a definitive answer to the problem. So you have to look at situations that happen in your ministry, that happen in your organization, and you have to identify or spend time identifying the root of the issue. So volunteer participation may be the issue, right? And you may say, well, I'm going to switch the leader because that person, maybe people just don't like them. That may not be the root of the problem. It may be, but it may not be. But if you just move that leader, who may be someone you train, someone you've raised up, someone you've developed, you move them, you have to do that process all over again. But you may not have identified the actual problem. That could have been just a symptom. So you have to make sure you do the digging in any problem that comes up, and that will save you time in your energy. So if you identify the problem, you can then create a definitive solution rather than being very reactionary and trying to find quick fixes. In the life that we live in, things are moving so fast, it's easy to try to find these quick fixes. My dad used to do this thing, and I hope I'm politically correct, but we called it nig rigging. Right. And so if he couldn't fix something all the way, he puts a device on it to hold it in one place. It would just get him from point A to point B. It wasn't a real fix. It was just a quick fix. It was a temporary fix. Like many times, if I had older cars growing up and the radiator would have an issue, my dad would be like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this here right here on it, and it'll get you home. Or he'd say, get some sealant until you get to the mechanic. Those weren't permanent fixes, those were just temporary fixes. So what happens is when we become reactionary in our ministry, we're just doing temporary fixes. We got to make sure that we identify what the real problem is so that we can come up with a permanent solution and not a temporary solution. Why don't you want to come up with a temporary solution, Cherie? Because temporary solutions only work temporarily. You have to keep coming back. You have to keep fixing the problem. You have to keep trying to figure out what's wrong. So if you take the time in the beginning to figure out what that problem is, you can dig in there, figure out what the root of the problem is, make a decision that will be a definitive solution for the problem, and then that problem is done with. The problem is done. So remember, don't invest your time in trying to problem solve symptoms, solve the actual problem. Figure out what's the real problem. Why can't we keep volunteers? What's the real problem? Why are the kids not coming? What's the real problem? Why are parents having an issue with our check-in process? What's the real problem? Why is my pastor not wanting to invest in this area of ministry? What's the real problem? When you figure out what's the real problem and you come up with a definitive solution, you will save yourself energy in the end. Not these quick fixes doing stuff that may not even work, or that will keep you coming back to the same thing over and over again. So one resource that I see that we have to make sure we pay attention to is the resource of our energy. Now we're going to segue a little bit, or we're going to switch a little bit into a conversation about leverage and resources, all right? So leverage and resources. I am going to share my screen here with my PowerPoint for the night. Share screen. There we go. I think I did it. Yay, I did it. Okay, so leveraging resources. Tonight's class is leveraging our resources. I understand how to leverage the resources that we have. And again, if you're in an organization, it's highly likely, nonprofit organization or church organization, it's highly likely that resources may not be in abundance, right? They may not be saying, y'all got $20 million to do whatever y'all want to do. That's not really happening. It's not. They may say you have a clean slate. Organizations may say stuff like, you have a blank slate, you could do whatever you want to do. But all of those things don't always equate to dollars. It means you can come up with some plans, but we don't really have no money for you to fund those plans. So the resources that you need those resources. But there's a way that you can leverage the resources in your organization. So what does the word leverage mean? I'm going to go to slide number 2, I think, if I can figure out. Oh, wait. There we go. Oh, wait, it didn't work. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to work out my. Damn. There we go. Leveraging resources, class 2. All right. So the word leverage means it is the ability to influence a system or an environment. So leverage means it's your ability to influence a system or an environment in a way that multiplies the outcome of one's efforts without a corresponding increase in the consumption of the resources. So leveraging is this idea that I will increase what I have, or I'll multiply my outcomes, even if I don't multiply the actual resources. Resources would be money or time or things like that. But this leveraging idea is a way for me to multiply my outcome, even if I don't multiply my income, the income that's needed to sustain the particular project or this particular class. So leveraging is this idea. It's this influencing of a system or an environment in a way that multiplies the outcome of one's efforts without a corresponding increase in the consumption of resources. So it's being able to do more, even if what they've given you to do it with is not sufficient. So it's this idea, I can do more, even if what they've given me to work with is not sufficient. All right? So leveraging resources, it's, let's see, I have to drag and drop something. All right, leveraging resources. 1, leveraging it's the ability to influence a system or an environment. Then it says having a relatively small amount of cost yield and a high level of return. It's when you have a lot that you need to do, but you don't have everything that you need to do it with. You use what you have to make up for what you don't have. So that's how you leverage. And then the word resource is assets that can be drawn on. So you have to leverage, use what you have, your resources. These are assets that can be drawn on. You have to leverage what you have, use this ability, use this influence, and then you add it to resources. It's the assets that can be drawn on. So you leverage your resources. It's really cool concept in the church, leveraging your resources. Let's see. So when you leverage your resources, the first thing you have to know is you have to know what you're working with. The only way you can leverage your resources if you have to know what you're working with. So if you're a part of an organization, if you just started being a youth leader or a student leader or organization leader, and you just got there, or you just assumed some new roles and responsibilities, you have to know what you're working with. So you have tangible things that you're working with, and then there are intangible things that you're working with. There are tangible things that you're working with, and then there are intangible things that you're working with. The tangible things that you're working with are financial. Do we have money? They are physical. Do we have a place to operate out of? And then it could be technology. What type of technology are we working with? So these are the assessments that you have to do before you start any assignment. It's kind of like in developing a dream team. You got to know what the dream is. You got to understand the vision. So when you leverage resources, you have to know, what is it that I'm working with? I can't be successful if I don't know what I'm working with. So you have to take the time to do the investigation to figure out what is it that I'm working with. But then you're always working with two things. You're working with tangible things, and that could be money, that could be physical place or space, and then that could also be technology. So let's say we're working with children. You need to know what kind of technology is available to us. Kids are highly technical. Kids like technology. So I need to know what technology is available to us. And then there are the intangible things, humans, innovation, and reputation. So if, for me, for example, if I take over a student ministry group, a student ministry area, my first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna investigate. What do we have? What are we working with? First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna understand what's the vision. What does the pastor, the leader of the organization want? And then after they tell me what they want, my first day that I show up on the job, I'm gonna start an investigation process, figuring out what is it that I'm working with, the tangible things and the intangible things, because sometimes the intangible things can be just as important as the tangible things. So I'm gonna look at tangibly, do we have a budget? Those are questions that you need to be asking. Do we have a budget? Then physical, is there a space designated for us? What do we have available? And then technology. Is there any technology that we can use? What do we have available to us? And if they say you don't have any of those things, then my next investigation are my intangibles. Humans. How many volunteers do I have? What people am I working with? How many kids am I working with? Then innovation. Innovation is something you can't see it, but then I need to look at my team. Who's on my team and what kind of skills and things do they bring to the team? Are they innovative? Are they people who can make something out of nothing? And then I look at my own innovation skills. How can I rig it? How can I make something out of nothing, right? And then the last thing I'm gonna look at is the reputation. What type of reputation does my ministry already have? That's an intangible. You have to know what type of reputation does my ministry already have within this organization. If you don't know that, you can be appealing for certain things and everybody else in the church think that the kids don't need that. Or they think that we gave that to them 5 years ago before you got there and now they don't want to give it to them now. So you have to know what's the reputation. Is the reputation, all them kids are bad or nobody wants to get involved? You got to understand what's the reputation of the area that you're leading in. All right. So you have to know what you are working with. The second thing you have to know is you have to know who's with you. You have to know who you are working with. So once you know what you are working with, then you have to know who you are working with. Who are the people that are part of my team? Who are the people that are here already? And I need to know about these children. Because starting to program for children, you got to know what kids are under your tutelage. So if they say you're over middle school and high school, you need to understand how many kids do we have? How many in middle school? How many in high school? Because the needs are different. If they say you're over children's ministry, pre-K 4 or pre-K 3 through 5th grade or something like that, you need to start knowing how many kids do we have? How many volunteers do we have? You have to know who you're working with. So a way that you figure out what you're working with and who you're working with. This is something that I recommend to everyone, is I recommend that everybody do a SWOT analysis of your organization. Any area that you've been given leadership over, do a SWOT analysis of that area. What is a SWOT analysis, Sheree? I'm sure everybody knows. It's an evaluation of the strengths, weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. It's a evaluation, observation of the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, or the threats. So if you have inherited an area, a organization, a specific place that you've been given leadership over, if you've inherited it and you didn't start it from the bottom, you have to do a SWOT analysis. Because you have to do the investigation so you can know what you're working with. So a part of knowing what you're working with is you have to do a SWOT analysis, understand the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. All right, that making any sense to everybody? Awesome sauce. Let's see. So the next thing after you do that, so we're going to talk about the various parts of SWOT analysis, the strengths and the weaknesses, the S and the W. The strengths and the weaknesses are your internal assessment of your organization. You have to know what's going on inside your organization. What's good? What do we have already? What don't we have? And what are we doing wrong? So how you understand the strengths and the weaknesses of your organization. It's all internal. You have to go deep inside. That means you got to have conversations with people who were there before you. You have to have conversations with volunteers, conversations with children. You have to do an internal assessment of your organization. Figure out what's good. What have we been doing good? What do we have already? What have we been doing wrong? And what don't we have? So you have to ask those hard questions, and that's how you start with understanding the strengths and the weaknesses of your organizations. The other part of the SWOT analysis are opportunities and threats. So these are opportunities and threats. These are external assessments of your organization. It's where you identify uncontrollable events that may hinder or impact you. So you have to be able to identify, the first thing you have to identify are internally. So you have to identify your strengths and your weaknesses. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Who do we have with us? Who don't we have? What do we need? But then you have to identify your opportunities and your threats. And these are all external. You have to identify these things that can be uncontrollable events that might hinder you. So my opportunities would be something like, if I realize a strength is we have great volunteer participation. A weakness is, well, let's say a strength would be we have kids who are showing up every week. That's a great thing. If we have a consistent number of kids showing up every week, that's a great thing. But a weakness may be I have low volunteer participation. What is the opportunity for something uncontrollable to happen? Having low volunteer participation puts the students and the adults at risk. That's an opportunity, right? So the opportunity is something bad can happen. The threat is if it puts us at risk, it puts the organization at risk. So you have to walk through your SWOT analysis of everything. So if one thing is good, it may be we have kids showing up every week. A weakness may be we don't quite have the right ratio of volunteers. All right. So what's an opportunity of something external that can happen? What's a threat that can happen as a result of this? The opportunity is something bad can happen. A kid could fall. We can have way more kids than adults, and we're not able to meet those needs. The threat is it won't only put that teacher in jeopardy. It won't only put that student in jeopardy. It then puts the organization in jeopardy. So you have to make sure whenever you start working in an organization, if you've inherited it and you didn't start it from the beginning, you have to do a SWOT analysis of what you're working with. Or maybe you started the organization and you've had some years down the line and you're looking at how can we change? We need to grow. We're not growing. A SWOT analysis will also be very important and very helpful for where you're going. All right? The next thing is you have to know what you need. So you have to know what you're working with. You have to know who you're working with, but then you have to know what you need. You have to ask those questions like, what are the things that we need to do the dream? Always go back to the vision. Always go back to the cause. What are the things that we need? So if the vision that you were given from the organization leader was, we want increased participation, we want it to be highly interactive, and we want food for the kids. You had 3 things. Now you have to figure out, what do I need to make these 3 things work? What do I need to do to make these 3 things a reality? So you have to know what you need. That could be people. You may need people. That could be money. You may need money. That could be food. You may need food, or that could be supplies. So you have to know what you need. And finding out what you need is you have to know what the vision is. You have to know what the dream is. You have to know what's the requirement, what's the cause that you're working for. That feeds you the information you need on what you need. Then after you figure out what you need, then you find out who has it. Who has what you need, right? So if what you need is people, what you need is money, if what you need is food, and what you need is supplies, and according to the organization's budget, they don't have a way of giving you this, then you have to figure out who has it, okay? So once you figure out what you need and you figure out who has it, that's when the leveraging begins. When you figure out what you need and then you figure out who has it, then the leveraging starts, all right? So I'm going to stop sharing and go back to just this screen. So once you figure out what you need, once you figure out who has it, then this process of leveraging starts. You say, okay, Cherie, what do you mean the leveraging starts? Then I can go to the people who have what I need based on what I have, If what I have doesn't add up to what I need, I then need to find out who has it. So, for instance, if I need people to execute a certain plan. We have an event coming up for my church. Let's say the event is Halloween is coming up, so we have trunk or treat here. At your church or your organization, you may have the Holy Haunted House, or you may have some sort of fall festival. That may be the vision, right? That's what you have. And in order for you to execute that, you need people. But when you look at your volunteer participation, you don't have enough people. Then you have to find out who has what you need. In a church setting, there are other ministries that have what you need. So if people are what I need to go and seek out people. So for church, how you leverage those resources is you realize I need people, right? So I'm going to go find a ministry that has people. For my need, I need people. So now I'm going to go find a ministry that has people, because in my ministry, I don't have enough people. So I need this event to go over well. I need the kids to be blessed. I need my pastor or my boss to be excited about what we've done. So I need people. So now I'm going to go to a ministry that has people. So I'm now going to go to the women's ministry because there are people there. I'm going to go to the men's ministry. There are people there. I'm going to go to the parking lot ministry because there are people there. I need people. Remember, you have to find out what you need. And if you don't have it, you got to find out who has it. So they have people. But of course, those people have needs, right? So you may need people, but the people that you need, they have needs. You have to know what you have that you can leverage as a resource to somebody else so they can give you what you need. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
You have to figure out what you have. Then you have to figure out if what you have is not enough to meet the need that you have to meet. Then you figure out who has it. But in order to go to them who have it, you have to know what you have that they may need. So what I've done in the past, this is one of my secrets. I know that I have young people who have energy and they have strength, right? Because that's the group that I'm leading. But then you have, I need people. So I may go to a men's ministry and I may say, I need some men to help me with an event. I need men to come in and help me with an event. And they may say, but we need young people on the parking lot. I'm able to leverage my resources because what I do have is I have kids, I have technology. I have to know what I have. What am I working with? What's in my arsenal of things that I'm working with? Because every group and organization has something that you're already working with. And if you don't have a lot, you may not be able to leverage a lot, but you can leverage with whatever you have. So then you take what you do have. I have able-bodied teenagers who can help clean up after a women's event. But I need women to help with the cooking. So if I have an event that requires food to be served or food to be cooked and we don't have the money that we need to do that, I can then go to the women's ministry and I can leverage what I have to get something from them. So what I have are teenage girls who could watch kids at a women's event. That's what I have. But what they need are the teenage girls. But what I need from them are women who would come and cook for my event. So I'm leveraging those resources. You have something that I need. I have something that you need. And all of that's within an organization. I haven't even gone outside of the church yet to figure out how to get my needs met. Now, there are ways that you can go outside of the church. If you have a need of food, if you say we have an event and we need food for this event, but my organization doesn't have the money, how do I leverage the resources that I do have outside of my organization to get what I need? Well, I look at my organization, I say, well, we have 5,000 people on roll. I'm going to go to the local Papa John's Pizza. And I'm going to have a conversation with the manager at Papa John's Pizza. And I'm going to let him know that I have a congregation of 5,000 people who could potentially come and visit your location and seed into what you all have going on here if you would do me the big favor of donating pizza for my event. I just leverage resources. Every business wants people, right? Every store, every food place, they need people to come and eat. They need people to come and buy stuff. They need people to come and buy whatever it is that they're selling. Well, I have access to 5,000. I have access to 5,000 people that I can tell about the brand new Papa John's that's on whatever street down the street from my church. I'm going to go and talk to that manager and tell him I got 5,000 people at my disposal. But what I need for you to do, for you to have access to my 5,000 people, I need you to donate pizza to my youth group. You may say, Cherie, this is crazy. I've done it. I served at a church in Houston some years ago, and we didn't have a large budget, but we started doing Bible study with teenagers. And we realized when they would get there, we were in the North Houston area, near the Greens Point area, and the people who were coming to our church were not people who had a lot of means, but we wanted those young people to be there. So we started our Bible study at 7 o'clock every Wednesday night, and it was in the same time our adult Bible study was happening. So people were bringing their kids, but we were in a community. We were in a low-income community. So we were reaching out to those children in the community. They were coming, and we realized they were hungry. We realized they needed to eat. And how we realized that? Because we had bad behavior issues, because we realized these kids need food. So we were like, we need to feed them. So we went to the pastor, and he was like, we really don't have the resources to do that. So me and my friend who was serving with me in ministry, we went to the local CC's Pizza down the street in Greens Point. We told them about how many people we served every week and how many people went to our church. We developed a partnership with them. They needed access to people. We needed access to pizza. CC's Pizza donated pizza and those little rolls, cinnamon rolls, every week for over a year. For over 1 year for free. Our arrangement was we would include CC's Pizza in our advertisement. That was our only arrangement. We would tell people about CC's Pizza. We would allow them to hand out flyers at our church, and we would advertise CC's Pizza. That was the only thing that we agreed to. And for an entire year, they donated the amount of pizza that we needed and those little cinnamon rolls. I know I gained 20 pounds that year because I was eating that pizza and those cinnamon rolls. But along with the kids, it wasn't the most healthiest choice, but we was able to leverage our resources. We had people, they had food. They needed people, we needed food. So this idea of leveraging resources is you have to know what you have. What are you working with? You got to do the digging. You have to do a SWOT analysis. You have to understand what you have access to, tangible and intangible, so that when you start thinking about, if this is what I have, but this is what I'm trying to do, and what I'm trying to do does not equally match what I have, now I have to figure out who has what I have. And you can do that internally in your organization by going to various ministries and leveraging what you have to work with. Or you can do that outside of your organization. At the church where I'm serving at now, at Change Church, in our children's ministry, we have several computers. So we have technology, right? So just this past week, we had an event, and our host team needed technology because typically the host team doesn't have computers, right? But they needed technology to be able to sign people in. Who has the technology in the church? The kids. So they came to me and they asked if they could use our technology. Well, you know, I leveraged that resource. So now what I need from you at our next event, we don't need any pushback from the host to come and help out and be a part of our event. So you have to figure out, how do I leverage these resources? There are the men's ministry or the parking lot ministry, they're always looking for young kids to volunteer and things like that. So they're like, you have any teenage boys that can volunteer? Well, I'm not going to push them to the parking lot unless I can have a conversation with the leader of the parking lot ministry about how those men can seed back into my ministry. How can we leverage these resources? But you can't leverage resources if you don't know what you're working with. So if you're new to an area, if you just started with an organization, or even if you've built it from the ground up, you've got to do the digging in your organization to do that SWOT analysis. Identify, what are the things that I'm working with? Who do I have working with me? What resources do we have available? What resources don't we have available? And then you have to figure out who has it. Who has what I need? And then you start to leverage those resources. You leverage what you have with what you need. You leverage what you have with what you need by finding out who has what you need. You leverage what you have with what you need by figuring out who's got what I need. What area has what I need? When I served at a church in Houston, we needed music. So I leveraged resources with the minister of music. If you can get somebody on your team to develop tracks for us, for our service, we can get some young people in the choir. It's just leveraging resources. You could call it using, I call it leveraging resources. Leveraging what you have for what you need. Leveraging what you have for what you need. And sometimes you'll do that in the marketplace, but you don't realize those things are very important even in the church. Leverage what you have for what you need. All right. Anybody have any questions or comments or concerns? Anybody have any questions, comments?
No. No.
Is this helpful? Is this
Yes, very helpful.
adding any value?
That's
Yeah,
good.
very helpful.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so I see we have Kels on the line. We have Don on the line. We have Catherine. And Catherine, you are in Atlanta, right?
Yes.
Catherine in Atlanta. Kels is in Houston. We have Michelle. She's in this northeastern corridor. Michelle, you live in New Jersey, right? I think she lives. Yeah, she does live.
Yeah.
You don't live in PA. You live in New Jersey. Then we have Dawn. Dawn's in New Jersey, and Charlene. They're in New Jersey. So, anybody have any? I just wanted to say who we had on the line. Anybody have any questions about anything I've said? Leveraging resources. The first resource that you have to make sure you pay attention to is the resource of your energy. Make sure you're using your energy correctly. Pay attention to where you have these energy depleters. Things will deplete all of your energy. You can't get any ministry done if all of your energy is gone. If all of your creative energy is gone, nothing is getting done. And then when you start looking at your organization, you have to do the SWOT analysis. You have to figure out what you have tangibly and intangibly that you're working with. And then you have to figure out what the need is. That's the dream, that's the vision. And then you have to figure out, what do I have already? You always start with what you already have. And then you figure out what I don't have, who has what I don't have. If it's people that I don't have, who has that? If it's money that I don't have. I remember serving in ministry in Houston at St. John's Church downtown, and we had a need for money. So we went to people who we knew had money. So there were several lawyers and physicians that went to our church who didn't have children. So we were able to propose to them ways that we could help them if they helped us. So you have to just think about, but you can't know what you have until you do the investigation. You got to investigate to figure out, what is it that I have? Then you figure out, what is it that I need? So that's what I don't have. And then you go and find who has it. And whoever has it, you may have to figure out, how do I give you what I have? Because typically if they have what you need, there's something that you need that they don't have. You got to leverage those resources. Got to leverage your resources. I think I'm done.
Yeah. I'm thinking, I have a question.
Go ahead.
How do you, I guess, communicate your plans with those that, I guess, you that's over you, say like your pastors or so, and in leveraging resources? How do you make sure that you stay, I guess, not so much communicating, but you stay, I guess, submitted to those, that you're not out there just doing your own thing? How are you able to present your ideas and before, like, your pastor or whomever is the director of the organization, and not feel like you're usurping anybody's authority or so? How would you go about doing that?
So based on,
saying?
the first thing that you're going to get from them is what they want.
Okay.
Get from them what they want. And that may be, if it's an organization, it may be understanding what the mission or the vision is. But you have to have those conversations with the leader of the organization. What is it that you want to see in this area of ministry? Challenge them to be very vocal and very direct and very candid and very honest with you about what they want to see. When I started at Change Church, I had a conversation with Pastor Daniels. I said, I need to know what you want to see. He gave me what he called the big three. 3 things, 3 areas that he wanted me to work with. And those were the 3 things that I tackled. So then I went in and I did my SWOT analysis. So I started digging and investigating what I was working with. When I presented him with the SWOT analysis, I then showed him how I can accomplish those 3 things based on this SWOT analysis that I got. I'm going to use this SWOT analysis, and then I'm going to match it against the 3 things that you want, and that's the plan that I'm going to develop.
Okay.
So I developed a plan off of the 3 things that he said were his big 3. And for some reason, they escaped my mind, but they were 3 things. I know one, safety of the
safety, yeah.
The other was balance.
To grow the ministry.
It was, grow the ministry, safety for the children and the adults. Experience, that's what it was. The experience, the atmosphere. He wanted the atmosphere to be different. He wanted me to have safety with adults and children. And then he wanted to make sure that the people serving were growing. So that was one of the reasons why we instituted, for those that are on here that are serving my ministry, we instituted trying to get people to serve one time a month, or giving people breaks, or making sure people are sitting a service and serving a service. That's all a part of making sure they're growing spiritually. You can't grow spiritually if all you do is serve in children's ministry and you never hear from your pastor. So I took the 3 things that were big for him. I did a SWOT analysis, showed him where we were deficient, and then I created a plan that was identifying how we can increase in those 3 areas. So you have to present the plan back.
Okay.
You have to hear from them. They got to be honest, and you have to challenge them sometimes, because what you'll deal with sometimes in student ministry, and I'll be honest and candid with you all since you serve in those areas, sometimes if your pastor was not a student pastor before, if your pastor is not very familiar with the needs of children, they may not know how to articulate what they want. So they may be saying stuff like, I just want the kids to have a good time. That doesn't really equate to what we do. Kids having a good time does not equate to what we do on a Sunday, what we do on a Wednesday, what we do on a Tuesday, what we do on a Thursday. There's so much more. So you got to push and challenge your leader to give you real direction on what they want to see in that area. What do you want it to look like? What do you want it to smell like? What do you want it to feel like when kids come? What do you want it to feel like when you walk in here? Get that leader, that director, that person over the ministry to be very clear. After they're very clear, then you go and you do the SWOT analysis and you develop a plan that speaks directly to the things that they said that they want. Does that answer the question a bit, Dawn?
Yes, it does.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Anybody else with a question, a comment?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The most thing that we need right now in our youth ministry are bodies. And when I say bodies, I mean the volunteers. We held a volunteer drive and a few people signed up. Well, actually, a lot of people signed up, but they didn't show up to the meeting that we had for them. So what do you do to draw the volunteers? We even told them we only need them maybe one time a year just to volunteer with the children. And we're having we don't know what else to do.
Okay. Thank you so much, Catherine. In instances like that, and I've seen that happen, we talked a little bit about it last week in developing the dream team, understanding the vision and things like that, the people that you want on your team, the people who you don't want on your team. But what I've done in instances like that is I go to what I call the politician method. Mm-hmm. This is not coined anywhere. It's my own personal thing. Mm-hmm. The politician method is where I walk through and I shake hands and I kiss babies and I personally invite people to serve with me. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and that may start with your own sphere of influence. People who you know will come just because it's you. People who you know will come just because they like you or because they've served with you in another area. So you have to figure out, do I have enough influence? Do I have enough push in this church or in this organization to get at least the people that I know to come and serve with me? And that may be a conversation over dinner Sunday after church. Okay, friend.
But we already have that group of people.
Okay, so you need additional.
So it's now, yeah. So now it's to where we've gathered all of the people that we have an influence over, if you will, and now we're trying to reach out to those people that we don't know, the newer people, because we need more help. The other people that are helping, they're just burnt out. So, I don't know. We only have a select few, that continue to come.
And we can definitely talk offline about it because I do have just some options or ideas. Okay. One could be how it's cast over the pulpit. Sometimes you need the pulpit power, and how it's cast over the pulpit could be very effective. I've seen that happen. It actually happened here at the church where I'm serving at in New Jersey. The pulpit cast really helped. So I got my pastor to agree to use his influence. I didn't have much. Mm-hmm. Or the influence I had was very little. So I needed his influence. And his influence got bodies to come to my meeting. There are other ways you can do it. How you cast either the pastor's influence or how you cast what we need. So that may be a video, that may be a fun day, that may be a breakfast, but it's all in how you cast what we need. Because by and large, typically in the African American church, people equate serving in children's ministry with work, babysitting, shopping.
Yes.
They equate serving in children's ministry with work. I work all day, every day. I am not working on Sunday. They equate it to babysitting. We just watching these kids. Or they create it to childcare. We just, so the parents can be free. And those are inaccurate assessments. So then you may have to tweak, how do I cast this vision? Because the vision should really be about discipleship. So it may mean creating something that shows people without you being a part of this ministry, this is how many young people, will not be affected by the word of God or will not grow in Jesus Christ. Talk about statistics on when kids start to make a real decision about their faith. There are statistics out there. So you have to sometimes be creative and make sure people are getting what you want them to get, because being honest, the especially in a Baptist church setting, and I've been in various denominational settings. In a Baptist church setting, children's ministry is looked at as, this is work, this is childcare, or this is babysitting. And we have to teach people what we want them to know.
Okay.
We got to teach them what we want them to know. But definitely, Catherine, we can definitely schedule some time to talk offline about some ideas and strategies that I can help you with. I want to be here. I want to coach. I want to help anybody. If you have questions in specific about like your area, how do we do it? This is what we're dealing with. This is what we're facing. I've been doing this about 20 years or so. I know I look 20. It's okay. But I've been doing this about 20 years or so. And I don't want everybody to be beating your head up against a brick when there are some answers out there. I've beat my head against the brick enough trying to figure out what's going on. So there are various things that we can do. And definitely, Catherine, we could talk offline. But I would say, if your influence, if the people that you have the influence with, they are tired and they're burned out and there are new people that you need, one, I would celebrate the people who are serving and then ask for another commitment. I've done it. Celebrate who's serving and ask for a 6-month commitment as we train new people, as we get the new people. Use pastor's influence. Get your pastor to really lean in on what he needs to see from people and who he wants to see. Get him involved in being there. He doesn't have to lead it or teach it. And sometimes you need that pulpit power. Pulpit power works.
Yes.
Pulpit power works. And then you have to change what people know about your area. You have to let them see what you want them to see. I don't want you to think childcare. I want you to think discipleship. I don't want you to think babysitting. I want you to think growing a young person in the ways of God. I don't want you to think working. I want you to think life change. So you got to change what you want people to know about your ministry. Did that help? Was that helpful, any?
It was, yes.
Okay. And we'll definitely make time to talk offline. Anybody else? Any questions or comments?
No.
Well, if nobody has any questions or comments, we are going to get ready to jump off. It's 8:02. My goal is to have integrity with our time if nobody has any questions. And what I am going to do when I stop the recording, it has to compress or do something. And then I figured out all of my glitches from that last week. I will then send it out. It'll be sent out as a YouTube link where you can watch it. And it'll also be on my website. So I'll send you a link to both of those so you can watch it. And if you want to share it with somebody or get together with people in your ministry to talk about it, I'm not opposed to that. I want to get the information out there. And I believe God's going to do whatever he needs to do with the content to help us in every way that we can. We will not have class on next Monday. Next Monday is September the 25th. We will not have class on September 25th. I think I sent everyone a copy of the actual class schedule. So it shows no class on September the 25th, but we'll be back the next following Monday, which, if I'm not mistaken, is October the 2nd.
Yes.
Yep, it's October the 2nd. So we'll come back for that class. So we will not be together on September the 25th, but we will be together on the 2nd. And then the next following Monday, that'll be our last class. On September the 2nd, we'll be talking about training disciples, how we preach and teach to young people to get the best out of them or to make sure we're getting that information, that content to them. And then the last week, we will be talking about, what's our last week class? I forgot. I don't remember, but it's in your outline. I don't know why I forgot.
Yeah.
But our last class, I forget but it's in your outline, so you can definitely see that, and I'll make sure.
Safe Sanctuary.
Safe Sanctuary, yes, that's actually outside of leveraging resources. Safe Sanctuary is one of my favorite things to talk about because I not only think that children need to be safe and measures need to be taken into consideration for them to be safe, but I think adults need to be safe. And sometimes as organizations, we do not pay attention to the safety measures that have to be in place for adults to be okay. You need the adults to be okay. So we'll talk about that. Training disciples and Safe Sanctuary will be our last 2 classes. Thank you guys so much for being on. I'll look for emails from me in reference to the recording from tonight and information about our next 2 classes. Thank you all. I love you all. I am praying for your ministries. Again, if you need me for anything, you can email me, you can text me, and I would love to set up time with any of you offline to talk about specific needs that you may have, specific questions that you may have. I am available for that. As a part of this course, you're a part of this course. I want to be able to avail myself, my expertise, my knocks on my head, the scars and the bruises, the rebukes that I've received. I want to be able to share those with you to make your ministry efforts that much easier. All right?
All right.
Okay.
I pray that
All
God blesses each and every one of you. Y'all take care and have a great day.
You too. Thank
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.